Originally from northwest America, Sitka spruce is the UK's most widely planted commercial conifer species, accounting for 25% of all British woodland cover. The productivity of Sitka spruce is predicted to decline as our climate changes, and it is also at risk from the non-native eight-toothed spruce bark beetle, Ips typographus, which has devastated plantations in parts of Europe and has already been spotted in southern England. Increasingly, the tree species diversity of Sitka spruce-dominated forests will enhance their resilience to climate change and pests and diseases, as well as their biodiversity value.
In our research, we specifically looked at the biodiversity that's found on Sitka spruce trees, and we found 564 species that will use Sitka spruce trees. This includes a range of birds and fungi, lichens, mosses, liverworts and mammals. All these species are generally quite common species. They will use other tree species, but they will also use Sitka spruce. The 6 of those species that are actually only found on Sitka spruce, which was perhaps quite surprising because Sitkas are non-native, so you'd have thought there wouldn't be species specifically found on Sitka. But those species are actually non-native themselves. They've come in with the Sitka spruce. However, not all of those 564 species will be found on any one Sitka spruce tree or in any one plantation. If we're going to diversify our Sitka spruce forest, we need to think about which tree species to use. Sitka grows really fast and creates quite a dense shade. So if you have intimate mixes of species, and by that I mean species that are planted quite closely together, then the Sitka spruce is likely to shade them out. So you really need to think about your planting patterns when you're thinking about diversification. Another advantage of diversifying our Sitka spruce forest is not only are you providing resilience for that biodiversity by planting other tree species as Sitka declines due to a pest or pathogen, but you're also potentially increasing the biodiversity supported, because species like oak or pine or sycamore will support biodiversity that's not found in Sitka spruce.
If tree species diversification is to be achieved, there are a number of practical considerations that woodland managers and policymakers must take into account. Based on DiversiTree social science interviews, most forest managers agreed that a primary reason for tree species diversification would be to enhance the resilience of their sites.
What we see quite clearly among production-focused managers, including those that manage Sitka spruce plantations, is a very complex and very nuanced understanding of the potential value that diversity and diversification might have for their woodlands' resilience to pests and diseases. However, that has to be balanced with the realities of production-focused woodland. Within an intimate mixture, for example, if one of these species were to become particularly affected by a pest and disease, the practicalities of going through that plantation and individually removing those damaged trees would simply be impossible, and a clear fell approach might be necessary regardless. Rather than mixing species together in the same plot or the same block, we might see a production manager planting large blocks of monoculture but adjacent to a different production species, mixing 4 or perhaps 5 productive species of trees within a larger woodland. And so what we might see is, while there is limited diversity at a very, very local micro scale, across an entire landscape, you begin to see a more complex, a more diverse ecosystem emerging.
So to support the diversification of our forests, we're increasingly using forest development types to inform the species mixtures that we use when we're replanting a site. And this is where projects like DiversiTree can help inform those management decisions on the ground.
Timber shortages in the 20th century led to the replanting of at least 44% of ancient woodland sites with non-native conifers, including Sitka spruce. There is now a major drive to restore these plantations on ancient woodland sites, or PAWS. Many contain remnant features that are being shaded out due to a lack of management and dense plantations of conifers such as Sitka spruce. The most important part of restoring ancient woodland is the slow correction of light levels by gradually thinning the canopy and allowing more light to reach the woodland floor. Carefully increasing the light levels allows surviving plants, trees and fungi to adapt slowly, meaning restoration is much more likely to be successful. A big part of the restoration process is increasing the species diversity present on site and gradually moving away from non-native conifers towards native species. This is a very slow process, and Sitka spruce may still be present on a site decades after it has entered restoration. It is therefore useful to understand the range of species that have been found to potentially use Sitka spruce and which may be present on a PAWS site where Sitka is retained to some degree. Along with ecological surveys of the site in question, information of this kind is invaluable for practitioners to make decisions about which native tree species may be best placed to diversify PAWS sites to maximise their biodiversity potential. If diversification is to be feasible and practicable for forest managers, more effective ways of incorporating it are needed, while still balancing any trade-off with the manager's priority objectives for what the forest can achieve. The datasets produced by the DiversiTree project allows forest managers to make evidence-based decisions about which tree species will best build on the potential of their woodland.